So for our next keynote session, we've decided to dig a little bit deeper. And we have our keynote panel discussion that will be representing multiple regions as well as multiple sales channels. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Andrew Catchpole, Editor-in-Chief of Harper's Wine and Spirits, all the way from the UK. And he will be introducing you to the rest of our panelists. So, Andrew, on to you.
Thank you, Anna. Well, good morning and welcome to our Global Export Conference 2020 panel discussion. We follow hot on the heels of Jancis and Elaine's presentation, which was fascinating, providing much food for thought. And we'll be looking to build upon that, more from a trade perspective. I have an incredible panel with me today, whom I will introduce in a moment, and I have no doubt they'll provide you with much further insight into the global export scene. First up, though, if we do cross over on anything that's been said in the earlier session this morning, then you'll have heard of it from both media and from the trade side, so it's possibly not fake news. Right. Start at the beginning. I'm Andrew Catchpole, editor, as Anna said, of Harper's Wine and Spirit, a leading UK-based drinks trade publication. Now, the UK market is considered by many to be the global shop window on the world of wine. Kind of if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, as the song has it. Primarily because it's so crowded and highly competitive, so it's a tough market. But given how cosmopolitan and international the UK market is, we certainly absorb, reflect, and even drive many of the key trends shaping the wider wine world, which is hopefully why I've been invited to moderate this panel, and not just as my hosts have quipped because I have a plummy British accent. I do, however, understand on a serious point with domestic demand dipping that California is renewing its focus on export markets, which brings us to why we are all here today. The aim of this session, and this is where the experience and expertise of this global panel will surely kick in, is to focus on the trends in key markets and their impacts on the export and sales of Californian wines. To do so, I'm joined by George Soleas, at the far end, President and CEO of Canada's Liquor Control Board of Ontario. We've changed the order. Sarah Norell, Vice President of Procurement at the Swedish Systembolaget. Troy Christensen, CEO of leading UK importer Entoria Co. And Kenichi Ohashi, MW, Head of Distribution Company Yamajin in Japan and a consultant. Yeah. So, great. Time is fairly short, so I will kick straight into it and invite. I should have said as well, we may have time for some audience Q&A at the end. If we don't, we're cracking straight into lunch. And I know the panel will be generous with their time if you have any specific questions regarding specific markets. But to crack straight in, I'd like to invite George first up to present on the Ontario market.
Well, thank you very much. It's a tough act to follow when you have to come after Elaine and Jancis Robinson. But good morning. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here. I don't have to shovel 10 centimeters of snow from last night. Give you a bit of a context about the LCBO. See if that changed. First, I have to learn how to use these. Perfect. That wasn't part of my job description. We are, as you know, in the province of Ontario. Canada has 10 provinces and 3 territories. Ontario is 40% of the population of Canada, about 14 million people. We are a crown agency. What does that mean? It means that we're owned by the government of Ontario. We operate 675 retail stores in Ontario in about 300 communities, but we're also wholesaling to 450 grocers. This is a new phenomenon in Ontario, as well as approximately 400 agency stores that sell beer, wine, and spirits, duty-free, and we also wholesale to another private monopoly called the beer store. Our revenue, which is about $6.4 billion, fetches approximately $2.3 to $2.4 billion net revenue, which goes back to the province of Ontario, and that money is used for infrastructure projects, funding education, healthcare, and so on. We are the only retailer in Ontario to sell beer, wine, and spirits, and ready to drink. The grocers will sell beer and cider, and some of them wine, but we're the only ones that sell spirits. We're also the only ones that have the ability to have an online presence. And I am very, very proud to say that we're the largest export market for California in Canada. So, and I think I'm correct about that, right? So there are three opportunities through the LCBO retail system for California wines to sell in Ontario. Aside from e-commerce and mobile commerce, you can sell through what we call the LCBO general listing. About 80 to 85% of the wines that are sold in Ontario, they go through this category. And these are wines that we know our customers love. They buy every day, so you will find them in most of our stores all the time. The other category is our vintages category. This is another brand of the LCBO. We release approximately 120 to 140 SKUs every 2 weeks. And these SKUs are actually part of our online presence as well. We have 300 of these boutiques in the 675 stores that we have in Ontario. And these boutiques are manned or are cared by our product consultants. These are very passionate, very knowledgeable individuals who service these boutiques. Now, products that we bring through vintages are highly sought after, more expensive, more rare wines that, as I said, we do that on a bi-weekly basis. The third channel is what we call the destination collection. So we have 16 stores that have these boutiques in them, and they are focused on specific regions of the world. So California has its own boutique or destination collection. It's a very, very nice store. It has approximately 450 California wines. I will challenge you because Italy has 850, and I'm sure that California can do just as well or better. And it is a store that it's very well shopped. So help me to get more wines into that. So that's another opportunity for California. Now, in terms of the California wine sales at the LCBO, California is the #2 destination for import wine shoppers. And year to date, on a rolling 13 period, California has 15% of the market share, or approximately $380 million worth of sales. The #1 import is Italy at 18%, and following California is France at 11%. Now, out of the $380 million, almost $280 million is actually red wine. And out of that, there's one single variety that does really well, at $187 million, and that is the Cabernet Sauvignon. Now, white wine is at approximately $60 or $70 million, and blended wines that used to be much, much higher than single varieties is now down to about $40 million. So, now, this is probably the most valuable slide that I have to present for you today. It is really the customer insights and trends that we're seeing in Ontario. And if we could just focus on the 4 points on the left, those are really the main trends that we're seeing that are related to California. It says less but better. We know that people are buying less wine, but when they buy wine, they actually buy more premium wine. And that really helps the California wine sales. This trend has had a favorable impact on California, given the portfolio's higher net dollar per liter. The other trend that we're seeing is that there is a rise in ultra-premium in Ontario. We continue to see a trend towards ultra-premium products, driven by customers willing to splurge on extravagant options and who see wine as a status symbol. And again, this has been favorable for Californians' premium portfolio, specifically from Napa Valley, where customers are willing to spend very premium prices on iconic products. The other trend we're seeing is the New World single varietals that Jancis and Elaine talked about before. We're seeing people buying more and more single varieties and moving away from blended wines, but they're also moving away from sweeter reds and also reds that are lighter. And the other trend that we're seeing is what was talked about before, is the sustainability and storytelling. People would like to know where the product is coming from, how it was treated. They want to know a story about it. And that's why at the LCBO right now, we're releasing our spirit of sustainability. And we're starting to communicate this not only to our own people, but also to the customers. I think the issue with sustainability is that it has not been communicated as well. We do sell organic. We do sell biodynamic. It's a very insignificant volume of those products that we sell. I believe that the majority of customers, once you explain to them sustainability, they will buy into that. The other trends that we're seeing are the younger demographics are not buying the same way as their parents did. They're buying more refreshing, more lighter wines. Rosé and sparkling is doing really well. Pinot Grigio and Sauvignon Blanc, those are wines, those are varieties that are also doing very well in our channel. And they go beyond the bottle. Talked about cans. Cans is something that is actually growing in Ontario. Tetra Pak is the other one. Bag-in-a-box is the other one. Or any other format that is actually sustainable and is appealing to the millennials. And they're looking for healthier alternatives. They're looking for lower calories. They're looking for less alcohol and less sugar as well. So I'll leave you with these three opportunities for growth in Ontario. One is, I know that California can lead innovation. I know that California has a wonderful story to tell in terms of its authenticity, in terms of its biodiversity, in terms of the stories that the wineries have to tell. And I believe that California can really dominate the ultra-premium in Ontario. And that's an area where we're seeing more and more people moving into. So thank you, and I'll pass it on to my colleague, Sarah.
Which one was it now? So another monopoly in front of you. Yes. So imagine a country in the far north of Europe, approximately the same size as California, but only 10 million people. Alcohol is sold in state-owned shops, retail, so we don't have any other monopoly. It's the retailing we're doing. We have about 430 shops and 450 pickup points. There's no offer buy 3, pay for 2. And we have very knowledgeable staff in the stores who are happy even though you buy just 1 bottle or a full case. We sell about 205 million liters of wine last year. And the vision is a society where alcohol can be enjoyed without anyone harming themselves or others. Yep. Yeah. And we are very proud of this young lady. And she also stands for the future customer. They drink it. They are not only very much into sustainability, but they also drink less. And I think you said a lot of good things that I believe stands also for the Swedish consumer, young consumer. 80% of young Swedes want companies to contribute to a better world. But it's not only the young people. 83% want Swedish companies to ensure fair working conditions in the supply chain. 90% of the Swedes think it is important that companies lower their climate emissions. And 50% are convinced limiting consumption is more important than new technology. 97% CEOs think the world believes sustainability is crucial to their company's success, but only 15% of world's top 500 companies are in line with the Paris Agreement. So obviously, Systembolaget, as a state-owned company, takes this very seriously, and we know that we have very high expectation when it comes to sustainability, both from our customers as well as our owners. And I think I'm repeating things that's been said now in the morning, not the least by Jens and Elaine. But what will we do to help our customers to make informed choices? We have shelf tags and we are educating them. It's ethically produced products, organic, it's climate efficient packaging, lower alcohol, etc. And looking at the bottles, you can see here that wine sales in Sweden, glass bottle stands for 35% of volumes, but 84% of the total impact on climate. Says quite a lot, doesn't it? So how come is so much wine sold in something else but glass bottles? Yes. So this is a graph from 2005, and you can see that bag-in-box has been doing 50% of volume since, and it's approximately the same still. And you also can see here that we have a steady increase in wine consumption or wine sales. But we have PET bottles, you talked about tetras, very efficient, good packaging. And we want to revamp it. You can see here that it's losing market share. We do push still wine in lightweight bottles. I think you've done it better, but we are on our way to do it even more efficiently. And we do the bag-in-box, and obviously bag-in-box is maybe the most efficient packaging when it comes to climate. So we are introducing new sizes for bag-in-box also to do more premium wines, even though the wines in bag-in-box in Sweden are of quite good quality. It's not only the lowest level. So why use heavy bottles? Another example of how important sustainability is in the Swedish market, and even though one could argue that organic is maybe not holistic enough, you can see here that in 2020 we said that 10%, in 2012 we said that by 2020 we should hit 10% organic products all over all categories. That was reached already in 2014. And today, for all categories, it's 15% value organic, and we're talking beer and spirits as well. And if you talk about only wine, it's 22.4% being organic in Sweden. So you can imagine if you're a country or region not doing a lot of organic, it's difficult to be competitive in the Swedish market. So how does US or California perform? Because California is the US in the Swedish market. And you can see here, it's not very easy to see, but US is 7 on this chart, and quite stable in volumes actually. Italy, France, Spain, South Africa. I'm not going to go more deeply into that, but why is Italy so successful? Well, they've been able, among other things, to perform well in organic wines. So average price is interesting to see when you've looked at volumes per country. And this is where US are doing very well, because you can see here that in 2005, American wines were the lowest priced actually, and now they are on top, number 2. So what else? Other success stories in the Swedish market. It's sparkling wine. You can see it grow by volume 7%, value 9%, and all over the categories you can see premiumization. The trend is very, very clear. Then we have Fair for Life. There's no premiumization here, but still we do a lot of volumes and growing 13% in volume. And I would say that Sweden are the country per capita drinking the most fair trade wines. Then you have non-alcoholic products, which are really gaining market share, and also we've been really doing it by a premiumization, really quality-wise. And I would say the food and wine trend leads that, but also the lifestyle, the healthy trend. So there are a lot of consumers coming in just to buy the non-alcoholic products. And then a big question mark for the hard seltzers. We are not there yet, but we can see that they are coming in now in our assortment. And what I think is more important is the can, that we discussed before, and we are also will be doing more canned wines. Since in Sweden about 90% of cans are recycled, so it's no virgin aluminum and a very climate efficient packaging. So coming to the end, and Andrew, you said what's specific for the Swedish market when it comes to the playing field, so to say, and we are treating all our suppliers very equally. It doesn't matter whether you're a small one or a large one. The only thing is, can you offer us a good wine at the price point where we are asking for a certain style? You're welcome. Transparency is also very important. Everything we do is transparent, from the launch plan to how we do our markup on pricing. And also we are brand neutral, so we are not favoring any brands against any other. We buy according to taste, profile, quality. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. And I think we'll come back to that as well, the interest offered by a monopoly where it is all an equal level playing field. But what's up, Troy, on the UK market?
Good morning. I am Troy Christensen. I apologize if you were expecting a posh British accent. Andrew is going to have to provide that for you. I do have a bit of a unique perspective. I started with Constellation Brands. I was here in the U.S. for quite a while on the wine side, and then beer and spirits. I was happily ensconced selling profitable Corona when I was encouraged by John Marco on the stand here to go to the UK, where he promised the weather was great. The retailers love the suppliers, the government loves the trade, and consumers love trading up, and he lied about everything. So while I was there, Constellation decided to exit the international business. My job was to move to Australia, sell it off, and run what is then Accolade Wines. It's interesting, I have Ravenswood on here, and we talk about innovation. And from the first two speakers, for those of you that haven't exported or been in these countries, it's probably speaking a foreign language, literally. I tried to convince Joel Peterson to sell a whole bunch of bag-in-the-box wine into Sweden, and he wouldn't. Bag-in-the-box is not premium, and so there's a lack of recognition sometimes on how the other market approaches. So I guess that was an interesting experience. I'm back in the UK now with the Yamajin Co. We are the preeminent premium wine and spirits wholesaler. About 2/3 of our business into the on-trade. Here are some of the U.S. brands that we represent. I thought it was interesting, and Jancis mentioned this. This is the trajectory of U.S. wine sales into the UK, and you can see there's a gigantic shift between the bottle in country and the bulk, which is bottled actually in the UK. And so this reflects the very low margin, price-sensitive nature of the UK. But it's a very big market, so it's about 44 billion pounds. That's about $60 billion. 2/3 of that in the on-trade, but much more volume is actually in the off-trade. Historically, a very big beer market, although that has declined for the last 2 decades. Craft has helped out in turning value over volume. Gin has been quite an animal. Now, this is an updated slide from 2 years ago. Wine and spirits were at 10 billion pounds just 18 months ago. It shows you the trajectory of those two things. And unfortunately, at the end of 2019, the first time since 2012 that sparkling had a decline. Most wine sold in the big retailers. It's a very price-sensitive market. Bars and clubs fairly sizable in the UK, but fairly wet-led. The pubs are a great place in the UK, fairly beer-led, but there's some great gastro pubs out there like Oakman Inns and City Pub Company that are selling some really good wine, so that's a great opportunity for California. The hotel and restaurant sector used to be where we sold a lot, but it's struggled recently. And we don't have 7-Elevens, but we have co-ops in the UK. So if you just want to look at the on-trade and off-trade channels broken down by category, I want to highlight the wine segment. And you can see it's had a tough time over the past year. It's down 6%. Well, the still wine's down 8%. And you can see that Prosecco's helped ameliorate a bit of that decline. Now, wine is the largest category by value in the off-trade of the major retailers. Unfortunately, the retailers know that their wine consumer is their best food consumer, and they use this as a loss leader to get people into their stores to buy the rest of their food. That's why it's such a difficult, price-sensitive category in the UK. So if you were to look at country of origin in the UK, you can see Australia's had quite a history there. It's always had a bit of a dominant position. A couple of big brands from Hardee's to Jacob's Creek have sort of held that. US, since 2015 down to 2019, has declined. Over the past 5 years, the big categories that have really improved have been the New Zealand and Argentina. But I really want to point out the price-sensitive nature of this marketplace. So the average price to consumer of a bottle of California wine is £4.45. 3 pounds of that is tax. You got to give the retailer some. You got to ship it over there. That leaves you with a pound. That's about $1.30. Now, the one thing that I will point out, if you look at that price per bottle, 6 pounds 5 years ago, £5.78, you lost 22 pence in 5 years. But the government during that time has increased taxes every year. So they took 33 pence during that period, and the price still went down 22p. So this is a big chunk of the difficult part of selling into the off-trade in the UK despite its size. It's dominated by the big guys out here. 11%, that's rest, is mainly own label. You can see a number of the brands. One of the interesting trends that's happened in the off-trade, Gallo's making no money on the lower end. They've launched Dark Horse at a higher price point. It's actually growing quite a bit. To one of the points made earlier, when you look at the varietals that are sold, a lot of people still think US is white Zinfandel. It's the majority up there. Between white Zin, generic red, generic white, that's what people are getting largely in the off-trade. Interesting, though, the trends do follow more varietal-led. So Pinot Grigio is still doing pretty well because it's been a big category in the UK. And if you see up there, you can actually see Malbec outselling Cabernet Sauvignon in the off-trade for the US. And that's just largely following on the Argentinian trend. Now, the on-trade, it's a little happier price model here, about 3.5 times the price per bottle in the on-trade that you will see in the off-trade. So there's more margin to play with, but you see quite an increase from 2015 to 2019. Now, what that is, a lot of white Zinfandel was sold in the pubs and clubs that were fairly wet-led. That's been replaced by Prosecco. So there still is this core group of premium California wines sold into the on-trade, independent specialists, and into the higher-end restaurant groups that actually have continued to drive it. But if you see what's happened in the on-trade, the 3 big categories, New Zealand up 54%. Prosecco's gone crazy, but it's really slowed up. And then gin and spirits, they're really taking on a big chunk of the wine category and other people's category in the UK recently. So there's been a big mix shift. The UK has had a bit of a challenge. There used to be big growth in casual dining. That was an area that we sold lots of wine. A lot of those casual dining places were Italian restaurants. However, still sold wines from around the world. Over the last few years, Jancis mentioned the negative Brexit word. That is a difficult thing that's really happened. So something that's happened, Brexit negatively impacted our currency, so food inflation moved to the highest it's ever been. In spite of that, the government put the biggest tax increase ever on the rate, so property taxes on casual dining. There was a minimum wage increase, additional taxes, and consumers started shifting their preference into sort of a Deliveroo and Uber Eats. And so you're seeing a big decline in that restaurant category over the recent time. And to reflect that, I'd like all of you in America to think, if I told you in 2 years, and I actually computed this, Applebee's, Olive Garden, Buffalo Wild Wings, Texas Roadhouse, Outback Steakhouse, Red Lobster, Cheesecake Factory, and Longhorn Steakhouse all went bankrupt, that would be a huge impact in your market. That's happened in the UK over the last 2 years. Every company up there has gone through restructuring or bankruptcy because of the additional price impact and the way that the consumers have shifted their consumption in the on-trade, which has a big negative impact on wine, but an opportunity to go get those consumers where they are. So where are they? Well, a little bit about the market trends. Low and no hitting UK as much as everybody else. We have dry January in the UK. 40% more consumers engaged in dry January than they did the year before. 70% of those feel like they're going to continue that trend throughout the course of the year. On the casual dining side, despite all of that restructuring, 50% of the top 100 groups are still losing money. So there still can be additional impact. And one of the big reasons is this Uber Eats and Deliveroo. No longer people want to go out. They're just going to sit at home, order a plate of pasta or a hamburger to be delivered in an hour, and they're going to watch Netflix. But they're buying wine from somewhere, and that does provide an opportunity. When they go out, this experiential is a big thing. People, and the social media has driven this, you can't go out. You have to have the best meal with the best looking people, having the most fun, and plaster it all over social media to prove you've got a better life than your friends, right? So this is exactly what's happened in the UK. They don't want that casual dining experience. When they go out, they really let something happen. And unfortunately, sometimes that up-tempo event is not great when it comes to wine. That's where I think wine in the cans and those kinds of things can really help. For those of you looking to export, do not export to the UK as if you're exporting to an American. They are very different. So from a consumer standpoint, the lifestyle brands, it's still heritage brands. The Brits have the old world right at their doorstep. They go over there on holiday. It is a great place to drink wine because you got wines from all over the world competing for these consumers. And they do like also the Commonwealth. Despite America having the first original Brexit, they don't consider you the Commonwealth. So ultimately, they do prefer Kiwi and American wines, and you really have to, there's an affinity for California, but you have to get your voice heard. The consumer is very different too. In America, if you're going to a dinner party, you're going to bring your best bottle of wine to prove, that you've got some substance about you. In the UK, you're going to bring a wine that demonstrates how clever you are. I got this greatest deal at Aldi for £5 on a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, and it's just a bit of a difference in the way that the majority of the consumers operate. I showed you the off-trade channel. A lot of people chase this volume. It is very difficult. There's very few independent specialists. They have mostly gone bankrupt. You basically have Majestic, but there's 500 independent specialists out there. They sell good wine to wine-interested folks, and they don't want to sell wines that are in any other retail or on-trade. A great opportunity for California. It's the world of private label, 50%. And again, people with extra juice, there's a lot of people happy to talk to you about using your juice in a private label product. You can move it profitably. I would just argue, don't expect that that's going to continue. We did a private label for Marks & Spencer. On that private label, we created the label, we created the brand name, and the brand name was actually the name of the person, Nella, that produced it, and it sold 200,000 cases, did a great job. The next year they tendered it out. We were 1 pence too high, and they shifted it to someone else. So it is that price competitive in the UK market. Relationships are pretty difficult. And again, so you have to manage your margins quite closely and go to those areas where you can find a little bit more profitability. So again, it's always hard to talk about the UK and sound upbeat. And I know I didn't give that a great attempt. However, there is lots of great opportunities for California wine, premium wine. You have lots of people that love your product, but there are a lot of difficult gatekeepers that they have to get through to be able to get it. The shift in the marketplace opens the door to areas like e-commerce, B2C, and on-demand, which is really burgeoning. The Naked Wines, Vivino has 35 million people that access its site. And I think it is a great opportunity to engage the people that sit at home and ordering Deliveroo, that they can actually get a very affordable, great bottle of wine directly. So that market in particular, beverage alcohol, e-commerce, wine's 50% of the category. Of that, total wines in the UK, about 5% of wine is sold through the B2C e-commerce. It's difficult to extricate the data, but it's about 2 billion pounds in turnover. There's 800 million people in China buying e-commerce. About 10% of wine is sold in China through e-commerce. It's grown 30% in the US, 20% in Europe, and still double digits in Asia. You can get to the consumer inexpensively through digital marketing, through content, and drag them to a couple of sites and avoid a lot of the expensive gatekeepers, and I think that's a great opportunity. The lighter and lower alcohol trend, you've heard it now repeatedly, bringing a lot of the big reds into the UK is going to be somewhat difficult. I would also suggest that the old world has a little bit more history. So I see a lot of times America talking about their second generation and out terroiring or out heritaging the old world is really difficult. Come with the USP that you believe is unique to you, and that's going to be really important instead of comparing yourself to the old world. And again, if you're looking to get rid of juice, there's a lot of people that can facilitate some good private-owned label that will help you out in the short term. So thank you very much. If I could.
Okay, thank you, Troy. I hope you're not too despondent about the UK market. The heritage thing's interesting. My house was built in 1825. It's just one of the neighborhood, but there again, it leaks like hell. It's cold as anything, and it's expensive as anything to upkeep, a bit like the UK. Over to you, Ken, on Japan.
Okay. Yes. After Troy's royal English, I'm so sorry for you, because my English is absolutely terrible. And please be patient against my very bad pronunciation. Yes. And good morning. And it's my pleasure to introduce myself. I'm Kenichi Ohashi, born in Japan. I'm MW based in Tokyo. I'm the president of a fine wine and sake distribution exporting company in Japan. And I also launched my own consulting company. And my hometown, Japan, is an important market for California wine in terms of value and volume. And boasting world's most Michelin-star restaurants, my analysis about Japanese market is based on both exact data and combining with my own research based on strong relationship in the industry. I hope that my presentation today will be useful. My presentation will start with an overview of Japanese wine market and specify the status of US wine, and followed by my analysis based on the research and conducted with key messages summarized from my study. Alcohol consumption in Japan is decreasing overall, especially wine consumption has been trending down in recent years. And wine consumption per capita in Japan is under 3 liters, only less than 4 bottles for a year, which is a small number. On the other hand, Japan is undoubtedly one of the most popular target markets in the world, and albeit very small consumption. Being targeted by a great number of wine promoters make Japan a competitive market. The status of US wine in Japanese market is not bad. Yeah. Instead, we could even say it performs well in such situations that overall trend appears very sluggish. As you can see, these are the top 3 major sales channels for US wine. On-trade distribution accounts for larger population in US wine sales comparing to other countries' wine, while the proportion of supermarket and convenience store contributing to US wine sales is comparatively lower, even though there are major channels for US wines. This is probably due to the lower price competitiveness of bottled wine compared to Chile, Argentina, and the European wines of cheap price range. Thus, I believe targeting on-trade distribution segment will help maximize the promotion effect for US wines. In fact, only wines range in price above $45 per bottle has shown upward trend in Japan, and wines of such high price range are rarely consumed in supermarket and the convenience store. Next, what I want to underline is very important and must understand is that fundamental features of Japanese market. First, the spirit of loyalty has long been existing in the history of Japan, and there is a wine consumption tendency of Japanese to stick to what they once liked. In other words, very conservative. For instance, Chablis has been the #1 choice with Japanese cuisine over the past 30 years still now. Japanese remain rooted to French wine, and French wine's market share has hardly fallen. Second, Japan has been facing a serious worker shortage over the last 5 years. As a result, many restaurants were forced to close. We conducted two kinds of surveys to find out more about California wine in the on-trade market under these circumstances, including quantitative and qualitative research to a leading on-trade distributor and the qualitative research to major importer of US wines. We surveyed this company, Kakuyasu, a liquor distributor giant in Japan, supplying beverage to around 25% of 110,000 restaurants in Tokyo. About 90 on-trade sales staff work in Kakuyasu responded. In addition, we also interviewed 4 major importers of California wine in Japan. By the way, the distributor mentioned above, Kakuyasu, is the biggest client of most of these 4 importers. The result straightforwardly showed us current situation of California wine in on-trade market of Japan, especially in Tokyo. In fact, sales staff of this on-trade distributor are not so highly motivated to promote California wine. Meanwhile, they haven't seen much demand for California wines from on-trade customers. That is, it becomes necessary to conduct more effective promotions, especially in Tokyo's on-trade market. Please look at this graph. The graph on the left showed that more than 1/4 of the distributors have high motivation to promote California wines, while the graph on the right showed that more than half of the staff responded that they haven't received any order requirement of California wines from restaurants. I was not able to involve restaurants in this research, so I have no idea what exactly are restaurateurs thinking. However, there are some interesting findings from further qualitative research by asking whether the sales staff can sell US wines or not, and why. I will explain at the key message part. We also asked what on-trade channels do they think will contribute to California wine sales in the future. Here is the result. The result obviously reflected one of the features of Japanese market that I mentioned, conservative. As we know, #1 and #3 are places that often serve fusion dishes, such as sashimi, carpaccio, risotto, ahijo, fried chicken and cheeses, etc. dishes that match wine well, but not categorized by nation. They responded that California wine have potential for these diverse fusion dishes. Let me explain a bit more. I believe most Japanese tend to like the concept of French food with French wines, Italian food with Italian wines, Japanese food with Japanese sake, and don't easily break these conventions. Now, I would like to propose several key messages based on the research result. First, for better or worse, the deeply rooted impression of California wine has left with Japanese consumers is fruity style with richer palate, which in fact looks positive to on-trade distributors and restaurateurs. On the other hand, the fruity style with richer palate is no longer the only image of most California wines, and appearances of diverse and unique style is a new attraction of California wines. However, I believe that deeper the existed image of California wine has penetrated in Japan's market. The easier for Japanese consumers to understand and the easier for distributors, restaurateurs to recommend and introduce even more so when Japan is facing severe workforce shortage now. Therefore, I think it is important to appealing to on-trade distributors that California wine style tend to be fruity and richer, to gain their recognition first, while the diversity of California wines can be introduced in a later stage. Next key message is, it is necessary to convey the strengths of your brand with simple but strong messages. One importer said, California wine has less information of terroir than its competitor French wines. For example, this difference in soil and climate from other areas. Thus, less attractive to top-class sommeliers in case of sommeliers who are especially eager to study wines. This is in the case. However, as mentioned earlier, Japanese market is facing serious workforce shortage. Many restaurant staff have less time to go out for wine seminars. Under such circumstances, a simple, less time consuming, powerful, and unique message will become the powerful weapon in sales promotion. And on the contrary, lengthy brand story will be less impressive and may not be considered as a brand strength anymore. The last key message, we were also told that though many California wine brands have achieved success in Japan, while they are not recognized as Napa Valley wines, Sonoma County wines, California wines. For example, the sales staff of the on-trade distributor told us once California wine was out of stock, one of the restaurants refused to change to another California wine if it isn't the same brand, but agreed to replace with a French wine at last. It isn't the same brand, what I want to underline is, if California producers could consciously involve the region's name in its brand promotion, it will absolutely contribute to increasing awareness and reputation of the whole California region in Japanese market. Let Japan's market recognize that there are a great number of good stuff from California region. That's it for today's presentation. I've covered current status of Japanese market, key messages by unveiling the features of Japanese market. The summary is as follows. Okay, anyway, my English was very bad, but I did it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, for an excellent presentation and your excellent English. That's good. Okay. Right, I'd like to prompt some discussion with a few questions from the panel and maybe look at the sort of broader picture of California first and then drill down a little bit into some points that were made that pertain to specific markets. So I think first up, very simple question. It's something that has hung over California for a long time in the UK. How well pitched is the pricing of US wines in your export markets? Does it need adjustment to compete with rivals like Bordeaux, Rioja, quality end of Australia, et cetera, and maybe just run down the line for a quick sort of feel of how you feel that California's priced generally.
If you're asking about Ontario, I think the California wines in Ontario are priced very well, hence why they're doing so well. Year over year, this year, you're up by 4.5%, which is a much higher than many other regions that are represented in Ontario. Nevertheless, is there an opportunity to be at a lower price? I give you some context. Italy, for example, owns 14% of the share of wines less than $13.95. California owns only 8%. So there may be an opportunity there for California to do better. But I want to stress again what I said before, is that a lot of customers are drinking less, but when they drink, they prefer more premium wines. So I don't want to send a message that we should be moving to a lower price range and forget about the premium wines. The premium wines have a place in Ontario, and I think that they will continue doing very well.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. Sarah, how about Sweden?
Well, you saw my presentation. It's been a really grand tour in premiumization, and driven both by the traditional Zinfandel that's been doing very well, also now doing more expensive Zinfandel, but also all the new that was talked about during the morning session, all the new grape varieties, the more balanced wines that comes in at a mid-price level, but for us it's quite expensive, and the Swedish krona is not very favorable either, so there are some challenges, no doubt.
Sure. Troy, you spoke about how tough the downward pressure on price has been in the UK, but where does California sit in all that?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a margin expectation, and part of my challenge when I worked at Constellation is, the brand image or the margin expectation. I would be putting Robert Mondavi Woodbridge out there at £10, where it was competing against Barolo Bordeaux, so they had some Amarones at entry-level points. So there is, at the Napa, at the high end, they compete very well, but I think, Jancis and everyone sort of talked about the area where you can move some volume profitably, and I think there is a bit of a challenge where you need to work a little bit deeper because there is some surplus wine at that premium level around the old world. I mean, some of the Grand Reserve Riocas are coming in at ridiculous pricing, and unfortunately, it's a little bit of the market you got to compete, so it's creating the brand. Not at the high end as much. Someone's going to buy Ridge is going to buy Ridge every year. It's sort of getting that, mid-level interest, and that is where I think you need to be a bit more price competitive.
And Ken, in Japan?
Yes, in Japan, the image of California wine is absolutely a little bit expensive rather than the other countries. Yes, but the result, as I already mentioned, is not bad. So, probably, we have a very good hope if the promotion is very, very properly handled. Yes, and I strongly believe that, and the California wine market in Japan is absolutely the better.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's interesting. So I think that sets me up for my next question to the panel, and that is, we hear that California is a situation of oversupply here, and yes, there's oversupply around the globe, but that comes, I believe, on the back of a sort of decline over the last couple of years, perhaps more in the US and the domestic market. What about looking forward? We're here at an event focusing on export, and it might be a slightly difficult question to ask, but what are the dangers of short-term kind of pushing out, reducing price, as opposed to looking at a kind of longer-term vision and sort of sticking with it at the sort of, California equals quality equals individuality? I mean, what do you think the sort of strategy should be looking forward and the dangers?
I would say that in Ontario, California should continue focusing on quality, value at every price range. And again, California is part of our value chain. So I would suggest to suppliers who are working with agents in Ontario, Ontario is a little bit different than other jurisdictions outside Canada, to ensure that their agents and the suppliers themselves, they understand the objectives, the goals, and the strategy of the LCBO and where we're driving. Because, and by the way, California and the California Wine Institute and the industry have been very, very proactively collaborative. Mm-hmm. And hence, that's one of the reasons why they're doing so well in Ontario. Is there more to do? This is a partnership. Obviously, it works both ways. So I would say that we need to continue on that, but focus on the quality and the value at every price range, because that's where I think California has done well in Ontario.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would possibly disagree with that. If anyone wants to alternative view, I'll move it on. Sarah?
Maybe if I would bring out the sustainability part of it for our market could be an opportunity. I do agree with the focus on quality and new grape varieties and funky wines, but also I think that we have a need to have these certificates on the label, on the bottling, to really being able to convey that to the consumer, to the customer. I think that would be...
Can I add to that as well? Is that we're just releasing our what we call the spirit of sustainability at the LCBO, and you're going to see much more through our food and drink, which is another brand that we have, as well as we'd like to bring this to life within our stores. So we're starting to educate our own people as well as the customers. So we're basing this on good people, good planet, and good partnerships. And California has been a fantastic partner in this area, and I know we've studied the sustainability program of California, and that's something that I think I would consider it at a more mature level than other sustainability programs. So I would say that's another area. I agree with my colleague here that that's another area that California could do very well in promoting sustainability, and we will help you with that. And again, we're not trying to create a greenwash here. We're trying to educate the customer to understand sustainability, because organic and biodynamic, in my opinion, is just not sustainable. Sustainability is what is sustainable.
Yeah, I was interested in the conversation this morning, and while I really get that consumers can lock on to organic, it's a thing that's easy for them to understand, that the more holistic, sustainable criteria in all its forms, holistically, we need to look at that a lot more, but somehow get that across. So, I mean, Sarah, is the more that, as we've jumped to sustainability, that the producers here could be doing, collectively or otherwise, to help you in market to promote their sustainable credentials. It's obviously such a big thing. People are so passionate about it here. I mean, this week I'm running into a lot of people to talk about it.
Yeah, I understand that's a bit of a shyness here, really, to talk and tell about what's being done. And I've also seen a reluctance in doing so on the labels. We just have mapped all the different certifications in the world, including the Californian initiative. And so we will be using that to inform the consumers more deeply. Of course, it's not easy, because it's easy to understand organic, but this is more holistic, like you said, George. And I think that will make a difference, and we will also be asking for products, launching those products more frequently.
Okay, so sustainability. Speak up even more, guys.
Yes.
Right, I wanted to ask a question about we heard from Janssen Lane this morning, and it's something that's always stuck in my mind and is discussed a lot in the market. I know well the UK, but the sort of the hole in the middle for California. And I just wondered, how do we kind of get over that? There are all these fabulous wines being produced. There's some good value there. The volumes may not be absolutely massive in these sort of mid-tier wines, but perhaps big enough to make it worthwhile to bring them in. You can make a little bit out of them. What's going on there? What's the stumbling block? Does it lie with you guys, the buyers? Does it lie with the consumer? Is it something that's going wrong with the producers here in the room in terms of reaching the market and actually penetrating? Troy, what thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I think there is an opportunity, and quite frankly, I think it's a great opportunity for California now, because you've had the greatest wine market in the world right here, and you guys are selling to it, and now you got a little bit extra. You're very interested and motivated to selling externally into other export markets. I wouldn't panic. Look for some private label to get rid of some juice at some good price. Don't damage your brands. There's a lot of things that you can do. The UK has lots of these, the IWSC and these kinds of awards, and very rarely are we pushed hard. And so when you look at the number of awards by the other countries of origin, they see these as the vehicle to get into the UK, and you just don't necessarily see that as much in the States. And so I think that a lot of the normal things that you would do and really forcing to export haven't been done. And you can't do that overnight, but I think we can continue, and the California Wine Institute can help us drive those kinds of things, and I'm very interested in doing that. I would caution, I've seen Australia do this, that they decided this trend in Italy, we're going to plant a lot of Italian grapes, and then I'm going to export a lot of those into the UK. Okay, why do I need Nebbiolo from Australia when I can just go get some pretty good Nebbiolo from Italy? And so that's fine for the domestic market. I would caution you against leveraging some indigenous varietal known for another country and exporting that to the UK as something unique and different. Others have tried and they've failed.
Yeah, someone almost sounded, apologetics too strong a word this morning, but cautious about saying, yeah, but we're great at Cabernet, we're great at Chardonnay, etc. I don't think you want to forget those things. There's still a big market for them, obviously, and stylistically now, especially Chardonnay, is sitting in a fantastic place. So, and I think you've got it just about right. So sometimes it's a case of hanging in there, I think, and the pendulum swings and it all comes back. Ken, could I ask you the same sort of question with between the bottom and the very premium end, sort of with the on-trade in Japan?
Okay. It is very exclusive for of course, the Michelin three-star gastronomic restaurants, but also on the nightclub. Yes, it's a night market. And for example, we have a very big, the Dom Perignon or the other, Jacques Sillos, Top Cuvée, or the Salon, and most of them are consumed in a nightclub market. Yes, and men and serve the ladies. Yes, together with a very, very expensive, yes, gorgeous wines. Yeah, it is very strong. And if properly promoted, it's potentially a very good market. But if a lack of brand story or a very, very good quality telling, and absolutely it's not good market personally. Yes, it is Japan.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Right. So where are we going from there? George, I thought it might be interesting, given that Ontario's and Canada perhaps more broadly is a producer of its own wines and exporter, as well obviously as a major import territory or export territory for California. Are the wineries tend to be sort of, on the smaller scale, so there's something sort of niche and premium necessarily going on in terms of positioning elsewhere. Is there anything that you could give from experiences there to the California producers in this room in terms of dealing with overseas markets, especially at the premium end?
I would say, unfortunately, there are no parallels here.
No.
The Ontario wine industry has not done a very good job in exporting Ontario wines. They do have 24% of the share in Ontario. They do export to other provinces within Canada, but I wouldn't say they haven't been successful. I don't believe that they have tried, actually, to export Ontario wine. So I don't think California has anything to learn from Ontario winery exporting elsewhere. But I must say that California they haven't been shy. They've come to Ontario. They've done a good job in marketing their products. They do a great job in doing tastings, which really work. And if I look at Italy, that has 18% of the wine share in Ontario, that's exactly what they do. They have wines, great quality, good value at every range, and they continuously do tastings and market their products. So, and California has done the same, but there's an opportunity to do even more. The other opportunity for California, and I know that it's not related to the question you asked, is our online is not mature yet. In fact, I would say that we haven't really put a lot of effort into our online. So this October, we will have a dedicated distribution center for online, and that's when we're going to push on the gas. And I think California will have the opportunity to have a lot of those wines online, and I believe once we get all of the restaurants online, that channel will really grow and become an extension of our retail. So that's an opportunity for California as well.
Okay, excellent. I want to swing it now onto the UK market, Troy, the positioning of California there. I think for a long time it's been seen as that, I mentioned before, that sort of shop window on the world of wine, and you also get the sense that for sort of the mid or more premium level especially, a lot of producers, not just from California, but they will get their wines into the right sorts of restaurants, the right sorts of places to showcase them, and they'll trump off and try and build their sales in China and elsewhere. Is there a sense that it may just be too tough for California to break in? Should it really be going for the UK market? Should it remain niche and do really well at being niche? What's your sort of sense of how far it sustainably can grow in the UK?
Yeah, I think a channel strategy is really important. The people see the big volumes that the UK can provide and get a little enticed by that, but as I demonstrated, there's just very little margin. So I think if you identify some key areas, some independent specialists, Majestic and these kinds of folks are good avenues to go out there and talk to your consumer base. The B2C, Naked Wines, Laithwaites, Virgin Wines, Vivino, these are very emerging, and growing kinds of places, and you sort of skip the whole gatekeeper and can speak directly to the consumer. And I think that helps grow the business because these are wine-interested people that want to continue to grow. So I would encourage the UK and everybody to try to come into the UK in a coordinated fashion. I think we have to be smart on how we do it. I think we have to recognize the margin challenges, but having a clear channel strategy and also doing it the right way. There's a lot of wine. I have 850 suppliers. It's really difficult to manage all of those. So when we talked about the brand ambassador, if you're going to do it, have someone there. I'll get the accounts, but someone needs to follow up and go in and talk to those accounts to sell the wine. So the way it works in the UK a little bit different. Because they'll buy from different places, or you'll get account bases where you get most of the wine, and then they're going to ask you for a fairly coordinated portfolio, and then you have to arm wrestle them to encourage them to try new things, and then do the right things to get the consumers to pull it off the wine list. So again, collaboration, coordination, all the things that I heard earlier, it doesn't happen very often around the world. And if the California and the California Wine Institute can facilitate a little bit of that in the UK, I'm quite confident we can make a big impact.
Excellent. And just one final very quick question. George, I think it's something you mentioned earlier, innovation. How would producers, how do they go about assessing what kind of innovation before they invest might work best in a given market? If we could just go sort of bang, bang, bang with a couple of ideas down the panel, and then I think time-wise we need to start wrapping up. Right.
Well, again, California is part of our value chain, so they need to stay in touch with everything that the LCBO is doing, the strategy that we have, the proactively collaborative meetings that we have on a regular basis would definitely help. I think testing the market as well is very important. Looking at successes elsewhere is something that we're very interested in. If there's something that's working in Japan or in the UK or even in the US, can we replicate that in Canada? Can we test it? So those are some of the things that we try to do with our suppliers to create innovation and to bring new ideas.
Yeah. Sarah,
I think that it's about being very open-minded and to new ideas to see what are others doing in other markets and having a close cooperation with your importer if you have one in Sweden, and also to have a dialogue with us. So that's where we will find new opportunities together.
Yeah, I think also look out and see what's happening, speaking about the UK market, and try to maybe look at some innovation internally. Interestingly, I was at the Wines of Valpolicella a few weeks ago talking, and the Appassimento style's been very, very popular in the UK recently, but because we're so price sensitive, they don't want to go into Veneto, they go to Puglia and get it cheap. And so Valpolicella was trying to understand how to create an authenticity around this, and one of the things they did is they did a New World versus Valpolicella wine tasting on the Appassimento style, and just about everywhere in the world there was actually some Italian winemaker doing some Appassimento style except the U.S. They couldn't find one in the U.S., so I thought it was so well. So they couldn't find that, so they used Orange Swift. But again, that was these little pockets of things that are happening and are somewhat interesting. And again, I thought it was sort of interesting that Peter Makombe, MW, sat up there and basically said, well, here's South Africa, here is New Zealand, here is Australia, here is Chile. Sorry, we don't have a U.S. So it was sort of an interesting opportunity to speak to the UK market in particular.
Thank you. And Ken, a final word from Japan?
Okay. A question to Andrew. Andrew, what is the exact question? I cannot understand.
Yeah. It was, is there just one particular innovation that you would like to see or would advise our Californian friends to
Okay.
present to
Okay,
your
thank you
market?
very much. Very slow conversation. Yes. Yes. Okay, for me, and the California wine reputation is already established in Japan, so that and to promote cheaper range is absolutely not good. Personally, I think. Yes. So, and please look for the strongest message, but very short. For example, Miranda Carr loves my wine. It's very strong. Yes, and the other information, okay, Parse or French Laundry uses this wine by the glass. It's a very strong message for us, and very short, but strong, useful. Yes, so please look for such a very strong key message supported by your Japanese importer. Yes, it's my final suggestion for you.
Yeah, so using to a degree what you naturally have in abundance in California, which is wonderful imagery, messages, and we said earlier, people, and wines, and food, and the list could go on. So on that note, keeping you all a little bit from lunch, but I think hopefully you've had some really good sort of insights from the panel today. It's been fantastic. I'd very much like to thank George, Sarah, Troy, and Ken for their time speaking to you.
And Andrew, thank you for doing such an outstanding job of leading a really interesting and compelling conversation. So at this point, we'd like to invite all of you to join us for lunch. We're going to be upstairs at the Heston Kitchens, and the CIA culinary team has been putting together a really interesting, dynamic lunch, so it'll be informal, so lots of opportunity for conversation. Immediately following lunch, we'll go into our breakout sessions, so be sure to check the schedule, and then we'll all end with a glass of wine later this afternoon upstairs in the upper atrium. So again, thank you all, and I'll see you at lunch.